Bear down, Bears fans. Question on the table today. Should the Chicago Bears still be looking to trade back one more time in this draft? We'll talk about all that and more in today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Let's go. Now, if you are new to the channel, please like the video. Please subscribe to the page. We do talk Chicago sports daily on this channel. It's the only channel talking Chicago sports, how Chicago talk. So make sure that you get in tune with us, man. So a lot of talk has been going around, all right, about what the Chicago Bears should be looking to do with the 9th overall pick, right? Should they actually draft the player? Who should they go get? Jalen Carter if Carter falls? Should they go get Skoransky, right? Should they go out there and get Paris Johnson? There's all these things that have come up, but the one thing that still remains on the table that Ryan Poles has not put to bed in the slightest is, should the Chicago Bears be looking to trade the 9th overall pick in the draft? And I think you have to look at this a couple of different ways, right? First things first, right? Adding more draft capital, adding more draft picks, more than likely is going to be the thing. But what team is looking to move up and to get who, right? What's the player that we think is going to fall that a team is going to say, hey, I have to get up to 9 because I don't believe that that guy is going to fall any further than that? I don't know if that player is really in this draft here, right? Like, our team's clamoring to move up to get Peter Skoransky, right? Is it a Luke Van Ness? Is it a Nolan Smith, right? Like, who's this player that we have to move up to take at 9? You have to have a partner to be in this dance, right? I think if there's an opportunity for you to make a real impact in your draft, right? A first round pick next year or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Let's have the conversation of it. You get their pick, you get a pick in the future. Sure. Let's have the conversation of it. I don't want to see the Bears falling out of the top 25 here, right? Like, I don't want to see the Bears just dropping at the top 20 realistically. I don't want to see the Bears dropping completely to the bottom of the first round here. But I do think that you have to evaluate kind of what are the players that you think somebody's going to move up for. And I just don't know if that player is there, right? Like, I've seen multiple mock drafts that has Paris Johnson falling as far as 13. I've seen multiple mock drafts that have Skoransky falling as far as 13. I've seen multiple mock drafts, right? Like, it's not like the quarterback prospects are going to be there now. What I will say is this: day of could change a lot of things, right? Right now, I believe all 4 quarterbacks will probably be off the board before we get to the number 9 pick, where the Chicago Bears are slated right now. But at the end of the day, you don't know. Somebody might have an entirely different mindset and say, you know what? I'm actually going to take Van Ness. I'm going to take him higher than he was slated to go. Is it going to be called a reach? Yeah. But you know what? I need this guy on my team right now. Wow, that would be a shock to everybody here, right? But that would throw the draft order off. Maybe then a Will Anderson or a Will Levis falls a little bit further. Maybe then, right, a Bryce Young falls a little bit further. Maybe then a Anthony Richardson, who looked phenomenal at his pro day today, falls a little bit further, right? Like, maybe in those situations, that's something where you have to have a good GM, where you have to have that guy that's going to be able to make decisions on the fly, because things are going to change on the fly in front of you. It's not going to be a perfect first 9 picks, more than likely. Usually something ends up getting a wrench thrown in it, right? Maybe Will Levis falls or something like that. I don't know what's going to be the name that does end up falling down, or if there is a name that even does end up falling down. But that's kind of the one situation where I would say, yeah, I want to see Ryan Poles kind of make that move. I do want to know how you guys feel, man. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think that the Chicago Bears should be trading out of this 9th pick overall? Do you think that getting more draft capital in this situation is going to be the better case for the Chicago Bears? Or do you think stand pat at 9 and make the pick? Here's the thing that I'll say when it comes to the Chicago Bears moving out of this pick. I don't want to just feel good about having draft capital. And I feel like that's how a lot of people are, right? You stockpile these picks, you move forward, you trade the pick, and then you trade the pick, and then you trade the pick, and then you trade the pick. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there with 37 first-round picks over the next 10 years, which sounds great, right? But at what point are we going to make the pick? Are there impact players in the top 10 players in this draft right here that will be on an NFL field and we'll be talking about for years to come? I think there are. And so for me, I think at a certain point, you have to be looking at this draft board and say, it's not just about, hey, should I just go get a guy, right? Are you getting a guy that's actually going to fit in at that 9th overall spot? Are you getting a guy that you're going to feel good about at that 9th overall spot? Are you getting a guy that you look at and you say, he's going to be a starter in the NFL for 10 plus years? He's going to be dominant. At some point, we're going to have to pay him quite a bit of money. That's the kind of player that we're getting. We're getting a top 10 player in the NFL draft. That's not something to scoff at. Can you move down and maybe get some pieces that are comparable, right? Some pieces that are high level pieces that play in the NFL, right? I always compare it to going out and, right, like you looked at Brian Urlacher on the Chicago Bears. Love Brian Urlacher, one of the best linebackers in NFL history, in Chicago Bears history. Was he as good as Ray Lewis? Right? So if you have a player that is that high up, if you have a player that you feel like is, hey, this guy is going to be a stud among his peers over the next 10 years, then I think you have to make that player. And to me, I think there are a couple of guys like that in this draft. I don't know if they'll end up playing at that position, right? But I look at Paris Johnson's tape and I say, wow, that is a guy that absolutely is going to be protecting somebody's quarterback for the next 10 years. I don't know if it's going to be at the left tackle position, probably more at the right tackle position if he were to get drafted by the Bears. But I look at him and say, yeah, that's a guy we could build around. That's a guy that is absolutely going to grow with this offense as this offense starts to improve in the right direction. That's a guy that helps this offense start to improve in the right direction, right? Skoransky, to me, I've told y'all, I think he's more slated as a guard in the NFL. I think they really like what they have with Braxton Jones here as well, because they basically said, we're not going to go out here and address the left tackle position in free agency. I doubt you're going to address that position in the draft if you're trying to, have Justin Fields be successful right away. You're probably going to want to have somebody that's already played that position there starting off the season. I think Braxton Jones is going to end up being slated as your starting left tackle on day one, barring injury, of course. But I do think that there's an opportunity to go out there and get another tackle in this draft that solidifies your offensive line. Guess what? Now your hope is Tevin Jenkins can stay healthy. He's a healthy right guard for the Chicago Bears. Hopefully Lucas Patrick can stay healthy. If not, of course, we still have Cody Whitehair on the roster. Then maybe you got Paris Johnson or Skoransky over on your right-hand side. Maybe you've got, right, like you got Nate Davis. He's going to be your guard here. You got Braxton Jones left. That's the makings of a young offensive line that's going to be able to grow with the quarterback that you have in the regime. So I think that you have to make picks right there. And guess what? There's still a ton that needs to be done in the trenches on this team. I know a lot of people have just kind of given up here on going out and finding that dominant 3 technique, but you can't. You know what I mean? Like you literally can't, because if you give up on going out and finding that dominant 3 technique, you're not going to have as effective linebackers as you had that you think you brought in, right? Like TJ Edwards. I love what TJ Edwards can be for this Chicago Bears team. I really do. I think that he and Tremaine Edmonds are going to be a linebacker dominant duo that we're going to talk about. But it feels like, right, like all of a sudden Jalen Carter was taken off of the board and there was no other name out there at that 3 technique. For me, right, I look at a guy, and maybe this is a reach at 9. Maybe there's a situation where you do move back, but I believe his name's Kalijah Cansey. He's a guy out of Pitt, dominant. Gets to the quarterback. Stop. I mean, come on. Like I would be looking at guys like that. I would be saying, hey, is there guys that maybe we're missing on that somebody else might not miss on that we don't feel like we're going to be able to get? Now, maybe that's more of a case for a draft back scenario, but players like that I look at in the draft here and I say, hey, I think this guy's really going to be able to make an impact as soon as he gets into the league, right? Like those are the guys that I'm looking for there. Now, Cansey, I believe I'm looking here. I got my mock drafts pulled up. I don't see him going in the first row. Oh, no, never mind. They got him going 6 to the Lions. They got Carter going 7 to the Raiders. So maybe he doesn't make it down that far. I love the name Kalijah Cansey. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought that he was a really, really dominant player. I was going to say they didn't have him in the first round. I'm going to have to switch this mock draft out. But no, I think the guys like that, right? Like guys that maybe are moving down a little bit further in the draft than you expected them to move are guys that you can go after, especially if, right, Jalen Carter is taken here by the Detroit Lions, which he might be, or if he's taken by the Vegas Raiders, which he might be, So I think that you have to keep all of those things in line. But the point of all of this is you have an opportunity to go get an impact player. offensively or defensively. Now, you still have to make the right choice, but the fact that you feel like you can go get an impact player at top 10 should be at the top of your reasons why you do not want to move off of this pick. At a certain point, having the draft capital is great, right? Having all of this capital, being able to go out there and have pick of the litter year after year after year is great. But you know what? At a certain point, you got to shut up or sit on the pot. I think that's how that saying goes. I'm pulling the haze right now. At a certain point, you have to make these picks. It's all about having bites at the apple, but at a certain point, you got to bite the apple. And it feels like a lot of Bears fans like the hope of having top draft picks, the hope of having these guys. I would trade out of it. I guarantee you, there are people that every single year would say, I would trade out of this pick. I would move on from this pick. You know, when you're able to do that, when you have a team that is winning enough and you feel like you're a couple of pieces away for you to trade out of that pick, that's when you make that move, right? Like, that's when you sit there, right? Like, I always look at the Rams going out to get Matthew Stafford and trading Jared Goff and their picks. It made sense then because you had a Super Bowl caliber team with Jared Goff that you literally could look at Jared Goff and say, the problem is he's not good enough. Not to say he's terrible, not to say he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's not good enough to win us a Super Bowl. So we got a guy that we feel in Matt Stafford is good enough to win us a Super Bowl. We can say, as Kid would say, F them picks. And so you have to be logical about this, but at a certain point, right, how do you get to that point? How do you get to the point where you can say F them picks? You have to make some of these picks, have some of these picks pan out, which has been the Chicago Bears' problem in the first round for a while here, right? This will be Ryan Poles' first round drafting for the Chicago Bears, but it hasn't been a great time under Ryan Pace, right? Going back 10, 11 years. And you know what? At a certain point, too, you have to be willing to make an investment in the quarterback that you have. The one thing that I will always knock Ryan Pace for, whether you feel he's a good GM, bad GM, fired justly, fired unjustly, whatever it is, he drafted a quarterback who ended up being subpar. And instead of going out there and saying the things you need to help you are the big guys standing in front of you, he went out and said, we're just going to get you more weapons. And yet his quarterback didn't have time to read a defense. His quarterback didn't have time to understand what was happening in front of him. And so when he's dropping back, he's running for his life. He's trying to get out of there. He's going to make a throw. Nothing's happening. Right? Like, it's not surprising because he had no beef up front. And so I look at that. The last offensive lineman we drafted, the Chicago Bears drafted in the first round, I give you the last two. How long? Think about how long ago that was. And Gabe Karimi. So there you go. You have to invest in the protection of a guy that you feel can be your franchise quarterback. You don't do that at the bottom of the barrel. You don't do that outside of it. When you have picks in the top 10, you don't do that at 25. You don't do that in the second round. You don't do that. You know why? Because there's an impact player sitting up there at 9 that you can go get. And I don't think this is a situation either where we're sitting here and we're having a conversation of, well, there's a guy also down at 27 that I could go get. There's a guy also down at 32 that I can go get. I don't think that's the situation here. I think that, yeah, there are those guys down there as well. But guess what? At the top of this, there's legitimate impact players that, yeah, you're going to have to pay a lot of money to, but they're going to keep what you hope to be your franchise quarterback alive. Or there's legitimate impact players, and they're going to make the life easier of your highest paid player that is on your defensive end now, and Tremaine Edmonds, and adding TJ Edwards into that, Jack Sanborn. They're going to make their lives easier. Oh, your DBs that you drafted last year, they're going to make their lives easier. Jalen Johnson, his life easier. His life easier. It's all about making the pieces you have currently work better. And I think that when at the end of the day, the Chicago Bears' job this year is to find guys in the draft that make the guys that you feel are your stars better. And if those guys turn into a star, that helps. But the goal is to make the guys you feel can be star players that you have on your team right now better. And so I think the Bears should move out of this pick. I shouldn't move out of this pick. I think that they should stand pat at 9. I think that there's some impact players that you can go get. And I think that you have to be realistic here. That doesn't mean you can't trade the rest of the draft, right? Like there's also that conclusion that comes to, right? Like say we want to trade a 2nd round pick, say we want to trade a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick. There's still that possibility. But I think right now when you're talking about impact that a team can have and impact a player can have on a team, you're not going to get in a better position than you're in right now at 9. But I do want to know how you guys feel, man. Maybe you guys feel different. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know why you guys feel different. I'll be down there talking with you as well. As always, man, it's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again to continue watching our Chicago Bears content. Click the links on the screen or check the links in the description below. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Peace.